Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Myat from Secondary 4, Bravura. Socrates once said that an unexamined life is not worth living. He believed that a life without self-reflection and critical thinking was devoid of any purpose. And for decades, we've taken this to heart. We've examined our lives, our actions, even our careers. But what about our emotions? Specifically, the ones we don't like. The ones that we find shameful or negative. The ones that we actively try to suppress, medicate, or even chase away. Today, I want to tell everyone that these very emotions we try to squash can actually fuel innovation. They say that necessity is the mother of invention, but I think they only got it half right. Because if you look closer, invention isn't just born out of necessity, it's also born out of emotion. All right, I want you all to think about this. The whole concept of stepping outside your comfort zone exists because of the idea that discomfort pushes us forward. So when we fail to examine these so-called negative emotions, we're not just ignoring them. We're actively shrinking our own creative capacity. As I'm sure many of you are aware, we live in a culture obsessed with the pursuit of happiness. Every company, every store is always trying to sell you a happier lifestyle. I like to call it the positivity prison. The wellness industry has become a billion-dollar gatekeeper, selling us the idea that happiness is the default, the goal, that a well-examined life is a happy one. Now, don't get me wrong. Happiness is wonderful and joy is precious. But somewhere along the line, we've began to treat every deep emotion as a problem to be solved. As if anything that isn't positive is an error in our system. Yet the truth is, creativity rarely ever comes wrapped in happiness. More often than not, it actually simmers in the quiet and uncomfortable corners of our minds. So today, let me introduce you to two of your most unlikely creative partners, emotions we've been taught to avoid, but desperately need to reclaim. Let's start with boredom, that restless, itchy feeling we see as a failure to be entertained. I remember it so vividly from my childhood, long summer afternoons with absolutely nothing to do. I would always complain to my parents who, with a wisdom I only now appreciate, would never give me a solution. They would always just laugh and tell me that I'd figure it out. And that's exactly what I did. Out of that desperate and whiny boredom, I figured it out. I renovated an empty space in my wardrobe into my very own DIY Barbie dream house. I built pillow forts. I am certain that I came up with 300 different ways to eat Nutella and bread. My brain had no source of entertainment, so it had to come up with its own. And looking back, my parents were actually neuroscientists without ever realizing it. Because back in 2013, a landmark study at the University of Central Lancashire put this to the test. They gave people a classic creativity task. Come up with as many uses as you can for a pair of polystyrene cups. But one group had to do a mind-numbingly boring task beforehand, copying numbers from a phone book. And the results? The board group didn't just do slightly better, they significantly outperformed the others, generating more uses that were also more original. So why does this happen? Because boredom isn't just an empty mind, it's a searching one. When you're bored, your brain activates a circuit called the default mode network. This is when you daydream, your mind wanders and starts connecting ideas that, frankly, have no business being together. Psychologists define boredom as the aversive state of wanting, yet being unable to engage in any satisfying activity. This wanting is important. Think of it like a tiny motor starting up inside your mind. When you reach for your phone to scroll through social media, it's like turning that motor off before it can actually go anywhere. I mean, yeah, sure, you stop the noise, but you never actually move forward. But if you sit with that boredom for a while, without reaching for an instant distraction, your brain starts to come up with its own ways to keep moving. In other words, boredom gives your brain the space to drive itself. I'm sure many of you have heard of the term shower thoughts. Why do you think this concept was even created in the first place? I mean, it certainly wasn't because showers are magical places filled with wisdom. No, it's because in a shower, we are doing something so familiar, something so automatic, that our brains finally get permission to wander. Let's consider J.K. Rowling. The entire wizarding world of Harry Potter didn't come to her in a productive brainstorming session. It actually came to her on a delayed train, 4 hours with absolutely nothing to do but let her mind wander. No iPad, no phone, no TV, just her and her thoughts. In our fast-paced society, boredom is a gift we refuse to give ourselves. Stop trying to optimize every dull moment. You don't need to listen to podcasts while cleaning your room. You don't need to watch YouTube while eating lunch. When boredom strikes, don't rush to distract yourself. Instead, ask, if my brain is trying to escape this moment, where does it want to go? And what is it trying to build? And speaking of escaping, it's time to introduce our second companion. It's an emotion we're even more ashamed of: envy. I'm sure many of us have tried to escape envy before. We don't like to admit it, but we've all felt it. I especially have often felt envious. When I see someone my age accomplish great things, get successful, I can't help but ask myself, hey, why can't that be me? And in that moment, did I admire those people? No. Did I feel inspired by those people? No. All I felt was sharp and bitter envy. So I let it sit for a while. And eventually I realized something. I realized that envy was trying to tell me something important, that I wanted to be better, that I cared enough to feel that sting. We're taught that envy is ugly and malicious, and in its toxic, spiteful form, it can be. But there's another kind, one that researchers call benign envy. It's the kind that makes you want to level up rather than tear someone down. Psychologists like Marcel Zeelenberg have labeled this as a powerful motivator. It triggers a performance-oriented mindset. People experiencing benign envy will often work longer and harder on tasks, seeing the other person's success not as a threat, but as a proof of concept. Evidence that it can be done. So what's the difference between benign and malicious envy? It's simple. Malicious envy focuses on the other person, while benign envy focuses on your own self-improvement. Malicious envy is the shameful and destructive version we typically think of, but benign envy is the motivational and constructive version. I mean, history's greatest creative endeavors were often fueled by envy. The Italian Renaissance wasn't just about artistic genius. It was about the fierce rivalry between Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci. Their envy wasn't a distraction. It was the catalyst that drove Michelangelo to spend 4 years on his back painting the Sistine Chapel ceiling. The things we envy reveal our values. often more honestly than what we claim to value. If you envy someone's fame, you might value recognition. If you envy someone's freedom, you value autonomy. If you envy someone's close-knit relationships, you value community. Envy bypasses our justifications and points directly to our heart's true desires. So try to transform why them into how me. The unproductive question is, why do they deserve it? But the productive question is, what must I become to deserve that? This shifts you from a passive victim of circumstance to an active force in your own life. You cannot act entitled to things you didn't earn. That is the biggest lesson that envy teaches. Envy is not a sign that you are lacking. It is a sign that you are longing. And as we near the end, my challenge to you is this. Reframe your relationship with these so-called negative emotions. It's what I like to call the AIC. Acknowledge, interrogate, and create. When these emotions surface, don't rush to fight them. Instead, acknowledge the boredom, the envy, and then interrogate what they're trying to tell you. Finally, turn your insight into something tangible, a decision, a story, a plan, or even a creation. Socrates urged us to examine our lives, but I am urging you to examine your emotions. Our pursuit of a smooth, perpetually positive existence is not just unrealistic, it's robbing us of the very materials that make us innovative and human. Every unexamined emotion is a door waiting to be opened. Every time we suppress our discomfort, we lock away our best ideas. So use the heartbreak, use the weariness, the longings as your raw materials to create something messy, something visceral, something that is undeniably human. Because at the end of the day, we don't need more people performing happiness. We need more people who are not afraid to be authentic. Use every color that you have the privilege of getting. Because the masterpiece is in the mess. Thank you.